All right, Chapter 15 The Great Hullabaloo. Cougar captured by kids ran the banner headline in the newspaper the next morning. The boys had the pages spread out across the breakfast table. Oh, how Wally wished they were in school right now so that he could tell all about it. There, under the headline, was a photo of 12 kids, including Peter in his bunny slippers. The Benson boys were back and together. Well, the girls did help a little. They had captured the beast that had stalked Buckman since last November. He imagined standing up before Miss Applebaum and the whole class and recounting the terrifying ordeal in the garage. He had done something he had never done before, something no one else would ever do again, probably. Then he thought of Caroline, who would stand up next and tell how she, Caroline Lenore Malloy, had captured the beast single-handedly, and his own part didn't seem quite so wonderful. Man, oh man, oh man, said Steve. I wish this story would make the paper down in Georgia. Wouldn't we be something then? Hey, look at the grin on your face, Danny said, ribbing Bill as they studied the photo. And you weren't even there when the cougar was caught. Well, neither were you, Bill shot back. But we were all in on the planning, so we all get the credit, said Tony. It was my idea in the first place, said Steve. They had all read the story, but Mr. Hatford read it again, this time aloud. Police, firemen, rescue squad, and animal control officers were called to the residence of George Malloy, 611 Island Avenue, last night when one of his daughters trapped a cougar in their garage. A fourth grader, Caroline Malloy, 9, witnessed the cougar entering the open door of the garage on the property they rent from the Bensons and locked the animal inside. Wally Hatford, also in fourth grade, was in the loft of the garage at the time and had to be rescued by firemen. Jack Werner of Animal Control then entered the loft through the window and tranquilized the agitated animal. The cougar is believed to be the same elusive creature dubbed the Abaguchi, which has stalked residents of Buckman for the past several months. It is thought to be responsible for the deaths of several area pets. The Malloy girls, in conjunction with the Hatford boys and the visiting Benson brothers, presently of Georgia, had hatched a scheme for capturing the cougar. Authorities believe the animal was drawn to the garage by the smell of a fried chicken dinner the children had consumed several hours earlier in the garage. We don't condone any private citizen taking it upon himself to capture a wild animal, Officer Lou Hanson said. Cougars are dangerous, and although they usually live solitary lives and keep their distance from humans, more and more wild animals are roaming closer to towns as man encroaches on their natural habitat. Cougars, of course, are rare in West Virginia, and it's possible that this one was owned by someone who had no license to harbor a wild animal and who did not want to notify authorities when the cougar escaped. We're just grateful that the ordeal is over and no one was hurt. But we've got to give the kids credit for quick thinking. Mr. Hatford, however, wasn't about to credit anybody. Now that his son was safely home again, he thought of all that might have happened. Wally, what were you thinking? He demanded. That I was about to die, Wally answered. The cougar could have killed you, maimed you forever. I don't know whether to ground you for a month or send the whole lot of you to Siberia. It was Jake who showed quick thinking now. How about if we put in 10 hours at the police station, mopping floors or washing windows or whatever they need us to do? Anything was better than being grounded. Sold, said his father. I'll tell them you're coming. But what I don't understand is if you boys were going to try a stunt like that, why Wally? Why not one of you older boys? We drew names, said Jake, and Wally got picked. Mrs. Hatford suddenly swooped down and put her arms around Wally as he took another bite of Cocoa Puffs. Oh, Wally, if anything had happened to you, I don't know what I would have done. I'd miss you so much. Wally stared straight ahead as she planted a kiss on his cheek, and his brothers giggled. She'd miss him? She would actually miss him? She almost sounded as though she'd miss him more than anyone else in the family. Mr. and Miss Benson arrived shortly after that, having heard the early morning news. Mrs. Benson was still in her slippers. My gracious, is everyone all right? She cried. We put them together for 5 days, Tom, and look what happened. They're in the newspaper, on the radio, TV, the works. TV? Yelped Danny. It was on the early news, and they'll repeat it again at 8:30, said his mother. Well, I'm staying home from work today, so I'll see it too. Mrs. Hatford turned on the TV, and they watched 6 commercials before the local news was repeated. The cougar captured yesterday in the garage of 611 Island Avenue has been checked over by wildlife experts and is on its way to a remote area of the Smoky Mountains where it will be set free. Its capture was part of a scheme by 12 local children to trap the animal, and though things didn't go quite according to plan, the cougar was locked in the garage long enough for animal control officials to tranquilize it and remove it from the premises. Buckman salutes the 12 plucky kids who hatched the scheme, but the final word from the mayor is, it's okay this time, but don't let it happen again. Can we go to the Malloys now, Steve asked. We want to show them the newspaper. The Malloys read newspapers too, you know. Why don't we take all you kids to the movies? We'd really rather see the Malloys. Then yes, by all means, go. They are so wired this morning I won't be able to keep them in the house. Please stay and visit. We can have the kitchen all to ourselves. Grabbing their jackets, the boys ran outside into the misty rain and headed for the footbridge. The water had been rising. If it keeps on raining like this, the river will flood. Remember that time it got up almost as high as the footbridge? Come on, I see the girls outside. Indeed, the Malloys were waiting for them, standing out in the yard. They looked like crossing guards in their yellow slickers. Wally had only come over here because the other guys wanted to, but he knew that Caroline would be unbearable. She was. Did you see? Did you see? My picture's right there on the front page, and... We're all on the front page, Caroline. Pipe down, will you? So what do you think? Was it a good idea or was it a good idea? Okay, so it was a good idea, said Jake. Now Steve was getting unbearable. I didn't even get a chance to put the chicken out, said Eddie. The cougar must have been really hungry to go for the leftover food scraps and bones. Wally, weren't you scared up there in the loft? I'd have been terrified, Beth asked. Oh, I don't know. I figured I'd get down sooner or later. Weren't you scared, Caroline, when you shut the door? Absolutely, positively terrified. My entire life flashed before my eyes. All the roles on Broadway I would never play. Did it for the good of Buckman, I told myself, even though I might be clawed to death. Oh, brother. All day, neighborhood kids came by the garage to see where the cougar had been trapped. They wanted to climb up into the loft to see where Wally had been hiding, to see the window where the animal control man had climbed inside. Caroline sat at the back of the garage, holding court like a queen, and all she would say was she was absolutely, positively terrified. She's sickening, said Beth. Do something, Eddie. Hey, Caroline, you know what we just found out? You may have RM disease. Anyone who is anywhere near a wild animal like a cougar is susceptible to an airborne virus that's sometimes fatal. You were probably closer than anyone. I wasn't as close as the animal control people. They've all been vaccinated against it. You weren't. What are the symptoms? Rapid heartbeat, excitability, flushed face, sweating hands, delusions of grandeur. Oh my gosh, Eddie, what will I do? How will I know if I've got it? You'll have to go to the hospital and get a bunch of tests. They'll stick a tube down your throat and take about 20 blood samples and put wires in your ears and everything. What is RM disease? Caroline asked. Running mouth disease, said Eddie. Caroline glowered at her sister and sat back down with her arms folded across her chest. Wally laughed too and looked around at the guys, glad it was all over and they could enjoy the rest of spring vacation. The boys were sitting on one side of the garage, the girls on the other, all except Steve and Eddie. They were sitting together side by side, and they were practically touching, Wally noticed. After all this, one of the Bensons had fallen for Eddie Malloy. He couldn't believe it.